Well, hello everyone. Welcome to another episode of World at War Comics. I got two amazing folks with me. I got Mr. Diego Valenzuela and I have Kevin Kleinrock. Am I pronouncing that right, Kevin?
Yep.
Yeah, I cannot wait to talk about your new title coming this July. I'm super excited. Chris reached out and said, man, two amazing creators doing a lot of awesome stuff. So I was like, yeah, let's do it. But before we get into that, man, what I would love to do is maybe go back a little bit for each of you and just talk about where the creative juices started in your life. Was it something that like me, watching Saturday morning cartoons and all of a sudden getting on the ground and trying to draw Batman and stuff like that is kind of how it started with me. Maybe we could start with both of you and find out how this passion for creating started, and then we'll lead right up to your title that's coming this July, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Diego, why
Yeah,
don't you go first?
All right, Mr. Diego.
yeah, for sure. So this is one of the most exciting things for me is that we're jumping into comic books. I've been a writer for uh, I like to think most of my life, and if I do the math, it is about right.
Yeah.
I started writing when I was 13, not professionally, obviously, but like just to answer your question, I like the way you phrased what started like the creative juices flowing. Like in my case, it's this really romantic story that's completely 100% true. I promise. Where when I was 12 years old, actually not 13, I remember having this dream, right? This really vivid, fantastic dream that was kind of inspired by a game I liked playing when I was a young 12-year-old nerd named Myst. And anyone who liked PC gaming in the 90s know which one I'm talking about. And I was dreaming something that was similar to that game, and I remember I kind of woke up during the climatic moment of the dream, and I hated that. I was like, no way, man, this story needs to be finished. So I kind of sat down and wrote the whole thing, like the dream from beginning to end. Obviously, uh, adding some stuff to I guess make it sound a little bit more coherent. And I wrote it down and with pen and paper. And in my mind, it was this huge novel, but it was probably just a stack of like 13 pieces of paper or something. But I did finish it. So that was, and I remember having this real huge high of having created something and sharing it with friends and them reading it and saying, yeah, it's fine. I don't know. And I don't think I've ever stopped writing since that time. Like
Uh,
I've always had at least one project going. Um, so that's how it started for me. Like I was always doing it like on my spare time when I was outside of school, sometimes during school, honestly. Like my first novel, I wrote it in class. And
I guess there's worse
it's
things
always
you could have done in class, right? That's pretty good.
I, exactly. I think that there were worse things to do, and
Yeah.
I will always appreciate that. Since you look really focused when you're writing, like no teacher ever said anything.
Yeah.
um, it's always felt like such a huge blessing to be able to translate that passion I've had since honestly that first time into a professional career, where I eventually started writing for uh, animated shows, for Cartoon Network, for other comic books, other I published or novels, all that stuff that I started doing professionally. And it was, I hope I'm not skipping ahead to your next questions, but
No, no, it's
another thing
good.
I've always was lucha. Being born and raised in Mexico City, it's just kind of something you live with. Such an awesome thing. So when I did get the chance to meet Kevin and join Mass Republic and hear all these awesome projects that we were uh, starting out or picking up again, uh, including of course the Luchaverse and the Catalyst.
Yeah.
It's just it's such a blessing, man. It's so cool to get to do this as a job.
Yeah, for sure. No, that's amazing. Yeah, just looking at your background and some of the things that you were doing, it's incredible, right? Creator, writer, screenwriter, animator, director, voice actor. I mean, Diego, you,
Yeah,
from a creative standpoint, right? You've been able to do a lot to release those creative juices that started at
yeah.
13. So congratulations on that, man.
Thank you,
That is
man. Thank
absolutely
you so
awesome.
much.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank
How
you.
about you, Kevin?
I think that for me, so growing up, I think the first thing that I remember really being a big fan of was G.I. Joe. In terms of like, watched the cartoon, read the comic book, first comic book series I ever collected, religiously as a kid. Bought the toys, and I was never really what I would say athletically gifted, and I would be out playing, parents would sign you up for t-ball or baseball or soccer. And I just remember always being out there in the field, but I wasn't really focused on playing the sport. I was, daydreaming my own stories, my own adventures, this G.I. Joe story or this other story. And so I think that the root started there with wanting to tell stories. And my career did not follow what I would call traditional storytelling, because ever since I was 16, I've been working in the world of professional wrestling. But since 18, I've been writing and producing professional wrestling, creating characters, writing drama, writing, the dialogue that comes out of people's mouths. And so that, for me, for the most part, over the last number of decades, has been my creative outlet. And the way that I sit down and write 12 weeks of television is the same kind of the way that you would arc a comic book arc or write a novel. And so I think that's what it developed into. But have always had a passion for being able to tell stories in different manners. And so what I'm so excited about with this launch of Mass Republic Comics is now, okay, we've been telling stories in the ring, and now we get to go beyond the ring, and we get to go and take these characters out into all the different genres of sci-fi and horror and fantasy and action, and really expand storytelling with these luchadors like hasn't been done in modern times, because there's certainly a history to it. In the 50s to the 70s, there was hundreds of lucha libre movies, and Santo had a comic book, and Tenebris Senior had a comic book, and but nobody's really done that for the modern era. And I think we're here to kind of not reboot the genre, but do a very modern interpretation of what that lucha libre genre is away from the ring.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that is absolutely fantastic. And I will tell you, when you look at comic books just in general, and you look at Hispanic superheroes, that's kind of where a big lack and a really big gap is. And I think, being married to a Mexican woman and having Mexican children, right? I would think that they would like to get into at least one or two comic books and see someone that maybe grew up a little bit like them, have some of the same cultural things that they could relate to. I think all of that is so positive. So I think that's awesome in and of itself. And then they have Lucha Libres being kind of the center of where all these stories are jumping from, especially with the popularity of wrestling where it is today. Absolutely incredible. I'm super excited and kind of pumped for it, and I haven't even read it yet, so that's pretty amazing.
Well, and I think one of the things too, so my business partner in Mass Republic, Ruben Zamora, his parents are Mexican, and he grew up in Southern California, originally in Los Angeles, and he would go see Lucha Libre at the Olympic Auditorium. And to him, he didn't grow up reading comic books. Batman and Superman weren't his superheroes, but the luchadors were. But it was different because he could actually go see them in person. And there they were with their masks and their capes and doing their heroic things, but they were real people. And so, when we put on our live events all over the country, his favorite thing is seeing those kids that are rushing to the ring to reach out and touch those heroes. And so to be able to now go and take it beyond the ring and into the comics, and like you said, provide, even right now, just in the United States alone, nearly 30% of the youth are Hispanic, and the overwhelming majority of that is Mexican or Mexican descent. And so, everybody knows that there is a significant lack of percentage of entertainment or TV shows or films or comics that speak to that audience, compared to their percentage of the population. And so one of the things that we really want to do is just figure out how can we increase that representation, and in a fun way.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Absolutely. So what I would love to know is, when were these characters developed? How long have these characters been around? And how much of the stories you're about to tell with Massive have you already had kind of in your back pocket, and now you're able to release them?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, right now, the way that it's structured and the way that all of our Master Republic comics are structured is that they are centered on one or more actual superstar luchadors. Mm-hmm. But it's not their origin story in wrestling. It is, there is a backstory and origin to the Luchaverse, which will eventually be told in due time. And I think that one of the big things that separates our storytelling from really most other stories that have been told about lucha libre is that there's a tendency to, when getting to the creative part of lucha libre, go back to the Aztecs and the Mayans and the masks. Our story world goes way back before that, and actually, when we get to it, we'll see how our story world influenced the Aztecs and the Mayans masks, and then kind of moved forward. And so, in the Catalyst, the 3-part kind of story that's starting and kicking everything off, they're being released as double features. So in the first one, we've got Rey Mysterio, who is the most recognizable luchador on the planet.
100%.
And Tenebris Jr., who globally might not be as well known, but in Mexico is absolutely a superstar. And his father was actually the first luchador after El Santo to have a comic book after him in the 70s.
That's crazy.
And so they are featured in the first one. When we get to issue 2, it's the Lucha Brothers, Penta and Rey Fenix, who are stars in Mexico as well as on AEW, which airs here in the US on TNT and TBS. And then also Solar and Super Astro, who are 2 of the most famous luchadors from the 70s and 80s. And they really not only are well known in Mexico, but they were part of the generation that went over to Japan and introduced lucha libre to Japan, and wrestlers in Japan started wearing masks and wrestling this high-flying style. And then in our third issue, it's Conan, who's another global superstar from his time in WCW and currently back with AAA in Mexico. And then the final chapter of the third issue is our new interludium chapter, where Diego comes in, and Diego kind of takes over the writing and pivots us from the first 5 stories where Ivan Plaza and Marco Lopez wrote the kind of original Catalyst event, and then takes us to kind of where we're going as a monthly ongoing series. And so right now, those 5 stories that Marco and Ivan wrote, those we've had in existence for a little bit now, but they weren't really massive or widely distributed, but very well received by the fans who were able to kind of get their hands on that story. And then, like I said, Diego comes in at the end and ties it all together and brings it all forward. And everything from there on is completely original. And we've got so many great stories to tell.
That's amazing. Now, Diego, when you come in, are you bringing more real life luchadors and bringing them into those stories like the first 3 issues? Is that kind of the idea, that you're bringing more of those in, or is it kind of a story about the ones that were already in the first 3 issues?
Well, I don't want to give too much away because
please don't.
Really exciting to see where this is going. I am, as Kevin was just saying, I kind of one of the big challenges of when I came on board is I read the first 5 issues which Marco and Ivan wrote, which are so good. One of the things I liked the most was how varied they are. Like, it feels like each one is telling its own kind of genre and its own mood, and it's really impressive how like I don't like making this comparison, but it's kind of like at the height of the MCU, where you had this one movie was a political thriller, one movie was almost a horror movie, you kind of had this whole thing to cover a whole spectrum of genres and these great characters. So I had this really exciting challenge of kind of tying them all together into what will become the next phase, right, of the large Luchaverse story. So without giving too much away, we are taking some of what will be familiar and what people already will know by the end of this 5-6 issue arc, what we're calling the Catalyst. And I love that name because it really is that. It's the Catalyst. It's the beginning. It's a kickoff of something much more epic. It's huge. It's just so big. Like Kevin just said, how far it really goes back in terms of how far it is rooted. So it's really exciting for me to really take over the amazing work that Marco and Ivan did, to bring forward something that I'm really kind of wearing a muscle I put myself because I really don't want to
Yeah.
talk
No, we
too
don't want to
much.
spoil anything for
I
fans,
don't
right?
want to spoil anything because it's so exciting, man. It's so cool what's coming.
That is so amazing. You look at Lucha Libre and you look at the impact that that has had on U.S. wrestling. I mean, I would say, I don't know what the percentage, but it's got to be a large percent of the action that takes place in the ring today has been influenced by luchadors, right? Just some of the crazy stuff that I didn't grow up with, right? When WWF first started, it was very simple, a little elbow, a kick from Hulk Hogan, body slams off the top ropes. Jimmy Superfly Snuka, I think, was one of the first wrestling that I saw where he took it like to a whole completely another level. And you're like, man, this guy is 30 feet in the air coming off the top ropes, right? And then you started getting luchadors into WWF, and it just started to change the game and the impact. And like you said, Japan. And is there going to be a portion where maybe some of that history will come through as well, or do you kind of pivot toward more of the heroic stuff that takes place after that?
So taking a step back first, I mean, literally, you can pinpoint when that change started, and that was in 1994 when Rey Mysterio and Psychosis went to ECW and had these matches that nobody had ever seen anything like that. Because this is the mid 90s, and if you wanted to watch wrestling from Mexico or you wanted to watch wrestling from Japan, you were tape trading. You were sending away for someone's fourth generation, tape that they got off of television, and so we're now, a match happens and you can watch it instantly on Google or on Instagram, and there's highlights, but it was not that way. And so Ray and Psychosis, and then Ray and Juventud Guerrera, they ended up going to WCW from there, and that's where Lucha Libre blew up. And every Monday night, 8 p.m., Nitro is opening with this crazy Lucha Libre match. And we now have a whole generation of wrestlers who, I mean, lucha moves are just part of their repertoire. It's just part of it. And people sometimes ask, what is it that makes a luchador a luchador? Is it any Mexican wrestler? Is it someone that wears a mask? Is it someone that, wrestles a particular style? And, I think it really, to us at least, being a luchador, it is that style. It is a much more high flying, colorful, energetic, style of wrestling. And that really nicely leaps out of the ring and onto the page in terms of just kind of the style of star now that we have for the stories that we're going to tell. And I think, I think that, in these stories, and in not just the Luchaverse comics, but Diego's role actually goes beyond just the comics. We brought Diego in as our head of story worlds for Mass Republic because we are simultaneously not necessarily specifically for the Luchaverse, but we've got about a dozen and a half projects that are different IP that are being developed for animation, from kids to adult, live action movies, unscripted series, and so we really needed somebody who could tell great stories, but could also make sure that we had this cohesiveness across all of the stories in the IP. And so that's what we brought Diego in for initially. And then it just worked so well to have him dive into the Luchaverse and kind of take the helm of where we were going. So, we do concede in these stories that the kind of day job of these luchadors is being a wrestler, putting on the spandex and going in the ring. Now, for some of these luchadors, that means pretending that they don't have these other powers while they're in the wrestling ring so they're not exposed. Yeah. And for others, it's, not everybody has the same type of ability. Ray is portrayed more of he's Rey Mysterio. He doesn't need to be any more than that. You need to add
to Rey Mysterio,
right? Whereas for Solar and Super Astro, they are more of these intergalactic beings that kind of are hiding out as luchadors. And whereas Conan was really in the military, and we kind of play that up, and he's the leader of this kind of black ops, clandestine, multinational kind of X-Files meets G.I. Joe type of organization. And so, they're real characters, a little bit influenced, kind of how they're portrayed in the wrestling world, in the comics. But like I said before, like these are not wrestling comics. Right. These are comics that happen to star luchadors who happen to be wrestlers in their part-time job, and world savers and monster hunters in their full-time jobs.
Yeah. So it's more like Clark Kent being a journalist, right? During the day, and Superman when he needs to be, right? So that
Yeah,
I think that's so
absolutely.
awesome. Yeah. That's so cool. And I love the premise that is being laid out for the storytelling. Can you go into a little bit more about Republic, because you're the president, the COO, like the creative guy at the top, right? What is the vision, not just with the Luchaverse, but with Mass Republic in general? Because you just mentioned, right, it will kind of tie into other things that you're doing from an animation standpoint. Like this is being published through Massive, but what are you doing in general around all this IP that is being created?
Yeah, so I guess taking a step back, and one of the things that really sets Mass Republic up to be different than everybody else is that, well, we're the only company in the world outside of Mexico that is dedicated to expanding lucha and lucha culture outside of Mexico, beyond its borders, and to the rest of the world. And so I had done a wrestling series for MTV back in 2007 called Wrestling Society X. And I learned a lot. First TV show I ever sold, first television show that, came and went very quickly. And I walked away from that whole experience very thankful, but, thinking two things. One, I need to build a company that next time I have an opportunity to do something on television, there's already a machine in place. That way, if the network, or these days the streamer, decides to go a different direction after 10 weeks, we can still move the ball forward. I didn't really have that structure back in 2007. So we've been building Mass Republic. I like to think of it as a machine with very small cogs, but we now know how to do everything, and we can just kind of expand those cogs. So one of the main things that we do when we started about 12 years ago now was we represent a lot of these luchadors for their IP, for their name, image, and likeness. Because in Mexico, it's just a bootleg culture, right? That's just accepted. You go to a wrestling match, and if you are Teneblis Jr., they're selling your mask and your T-shirts outside of the arena, and you're not seeing a penny from that. But it's nobody tries to stop that because it's just what it is.
Sure.
But we wanted to kind of educate and teach these luchadors that, you have fans all over the world, and if you gave them a way to buy officially licensed products, they'll probably buy them. And so we started very small, just making deals and, working with a local silkscreen guy to make official T-shirts that we were selling off of our website, or selling their masks directly to, fans all over the world. And so we represent dozens of luchadors, and all this stuff behind me is really, either officially licensed products that we've done now, or older products of the guys that we have represented or represent for licensing. So you can go into Hot Topic and get T-shirts of our luchadors. You can go into GameStop or FYE and pick up action figures. And so we've been building all of this so that as other opportunities come along for TV or for comics or whatever they might be, we can kind of immediately go into, well, hey, we have this comic now. What can we be doing in T-shirts? What can we be doing in action figures? What can we be doing in, other licensed things? So we've worked really hard building that. And then about 5 years ago now, we said, okay, we have all of these wrestlers. We have all of this creativity. Let's start thinking about what it would take to kind of launch our own studio. And, with that said, we had, there's some, I would say, television projects that have been in the works for, a decade, and it's hurtful when you think about that. But then I see other people, big name comic creators or big name, TV and film producers who are always like, yes, this project took 12 years, this project took 15 years. So it just, things take time. But we now are doing, like I said, we've got 3 different kids animated series that are in development with various partners. And actually Diego is writing one of them called Legend of Luchasatsu, which we have a partner of a animation studio down in Mexico called Demente Animation. So that one we're pushing along. We have some live action family kids and family films that we're developing. We've got some video games that we will be having announced later this year.
Wow.
We've got a middle grade book series that's going to be coming out. There's never been a middle grade novel book series about luchadors and kind of this adventure of them monster hunting. And what's exciting for us about that series is it's actually based around a real family of luchadors, Dragon Lee, who's in WWE, and Rush and Dralistico, who are in AEW, and their father, who trained them to be luchadors. But in the novel, he's training them not just to be luchadors when they're kids, but he's training them to be monster hunters as well. And so, like you talked about before, like think about when kids in school go to their scholastic book fair or whatever else, and the lack of representation of Hispanic heroes and Hispanic stories on those bookshelves. And so we're really excited about that trilogy that's going to launch later this year. And so I look at it, I call it our 360 180 approach. And what I mean by that is we are trying to bring people into the lucha libre entertainment space from birth to 100 years old. And along the way at each of those places, if you weren't a fan at 5 years old or 10 years old, there's a place for you to jump in when you decide to jump in. And when you do jump in, we've got 360 degrees we've got live events for you to attend. We've got comic books for you to read. We've got, animation and film that we're working on. We've got licensed products. And so it is a slow build, but we're building, and it's coming along.
That's amazing. Now, Diego, are you going to be doing any voice acting on the animated series that you're working on with Kevin?
I mean, I would love to. At the end, I guess that's not really my decision to make, but I would always I started my career, I guess, as a voice actor by giving voice to a character in a show I was writing, and that was just one of the most fulfilling things ever. I didn't even know this character until that point, but then the character became really famous, and I loved it so much. And ever since, I've I feel so blessed that I get the chance to both write and have experience as a voice actor in film and whatever. So I have had the chance to kind of play characters I've written myself.
Yeah.
Even though I didn't know I was gonna play them when I was writing them, that is something that happened a bunch of times.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it would be awesome, right? I love I feel like there's nothing that makes more sense and is better for a voice actor than to play a character or be part of a project in which you personally believe in. Like for most voice actors, you get a call, you go play a character. Maybe it's a franchise, maybe it's a character, the best of situations. But when it's also something you help create, it's extremely fulfilling, and it's like even knowing my most talented and most famous peers in the voice acting game, I don't think any of them have that blessing that I've had, that where you are playing characters you helped create, or that you helped envision, or you even wrote. So that is something amazing to me, and something for which I feel very blessed. And of course, if I get a chance to play anyone that Kevin or whoever's the director chooses to cast me in, I would be more than happy to do it.
Yeah. Now, from go ahead, please, Kevin.
Oh no, I was just saying. I will say we're still in the phase of working to sell them, but I definitely, it's become part of the pitch package of, hey, listen, we've also got this guy here who's been the voice of a Transformer and this and that, and so we've kind of got a little bit of built-in voice acting if we need it.
Exactly. Knock on wood, but it should be a pretty ezy sell to have Diego do a voice. Now, Diego, one more question from a writer standpoint. Writing, a storyline built around a comic book versus a video game versus an animated film or a full feature film. Is it a different, like it's the same muscle that you're using to be able to write all this, but I feel like it's like a different exercise you're doing on that muscle. Can you kind of share like the differences between each, or do you, in your mind, it's kind of all the same, you attack it the same way?
I guess it is. I've always been of the belief that like a good story can be a good story in any medium, in any age group, for any target. Like a good storyteller can do that. Like he can write, they can write. I'm sorry, a story for adults in this weird supernatural world, or they can write the friendliest kid story ever. In the end, I guess some of the things I've learned as a writer are always being applied to any project I take. Um, but I wouldn't say I approach them all the same way. Like writing comics, for instance, comics like this, it has its own challenges because um, you really have to be really efficient and with the economy of writing and storytelling. In these stories in particular, where you have a very specific amount of panels you can use, so you don't accidentally kill the artist with with the writing with drawing too much, and you do need to get a whole story across and get a whole character across. And in the case of the interludium, tie a bunch of stories. Like it almost has to be like a coherent sequel for five different stories and five different sets of characters, which is a huge challenge to take. And it is certainly different than writing another story, which is only maybe one lead character taking on their own new adventure. Um, I do think there are a lot of things that a lot of I guess the right word would be like instincts that you always use, no matter the medium, no matter the story. And in cases like this, where it's a project in which you are essentially working for the bigger picture and not only yourself. Like if I start writing my own book, there is no one going to tell me, no man, we need to do this, and these are the limitations. We need to have this done by this time. When you are writing professionally for a studio, for another project, by commission, by whatever, there are certain limitations that you absolutely need to take care of. You need to take care of your client,
Yeah.
and in the end, like, yeah, I am a writer and I am a creative person, but there are interests beyond your creative output here, right? So that is another challenge that I've always really enjoyed taking. Like
Yeah.
it's almost like a small difficulty modifier that it always changes. Like sometimes if I'm writing a show for Cartoon Network, you get uh you get a client that's really easy on you and goes like, yeah man, if you want to do this, go ahead. No, you just don't get too violent or whatever. And sometimes you get very specific clients. Like I like, for instance, I wrote a comic for the UN at some point, and they were extremely specific with what they wanted to do, and I really, there was very little wiggle room in that point. But in the end, I did have to use whatever lessons I've learned throughout my career to get the story told in the end, and to most importantly keep the client happy.
Yeah. Yeah. Is there one you prefer over the other? Do you like having a lot of instruction, or do you like just being given a topic and then allowing yourself to kind of go after it?
Oh man, I'm not sure. In the end, I think what I've always enjoyed most is what the content itself is.
Yeah.
Like in this, like speaking specifically on Luchaverse, it was just so easy for me to kind of pick it up, right? Because
Hmm.
it it's characters I love. It's the kind of storytelling I love. I'm working with certainly with Kevin, with whom I have a very good we have a very good understanding of what a good story is.
Yeah.
So we, like, whenever I pitch something, he's on board, and whenever he tells me something, I don't think I've ever disagreed with any note he's given me. So it's really been so easy, and that coming from a purely professional standpoint. But speaking creatively, it's also been extremely easy because we are writing stories about characters I love, and I've always loved superhero stories, and of course, I've always loved luchadors, and this was such an easy combination of the two that it just felt like slipping on a glove, man.
That's so cool, man. I love it. Now, Kevin and Diego, what is your relationship gonna look like through this title that's coming in July? Like obviously Diego, you'll be taking over the writing. I guess it's issue 6 is when you'll be taking over.
Yeah.
It's let's clarify
I'm
that there
sorry.
real
Yeah,
quick.
yeah,
So
please,
it's
yeah.
actually, so because the catalyst are double features, it's
Oh, okay.
actually it's the second half of
Yeah.
issue 3 and then issues 4 through 10.
Okay,
So
perfect. Thank you for clarifying that. Yeah.
yes. No, I know it's an interesting way that we're doing this launch, but we're excited. I think these double issues are really gonna they're really meaty. There's a lot of good story there. I think that it's going to be really good in terms of that pivot. I mean, just, again, no spoilers, but Diego just turned in and we finalized the script for number 4, which is the first, full issue of, after everything comes together. It's so good. It's so good. And just kind of go back on your question right now about art, the role. It's like,
Yeah.
I consider myself a consummate executive producer. And what I mean by that is I have ideas and I know enough that I'm not good enough at any of the specifics to get that job done. I'm not a writer. I'm not an artist. So I need to surround myself and we need to build these teams of people that can actually execute on those ideas. And then they go and they do their craft and they do it so well. And then they give a few notes like, oh, what about this? Or maybe we change this line here. But like, I think, in the entire 22-page script, there was like 4 little, like, maybe we change the words, here. But I'm so excited too for where it's going, because it's nothing that's been done before. It's not even just the superhero. We're for those next 6 issues, we're actually pivoting a little bit away from what I would call superhero storytelling. We're going a little bit darker, and it's going to be something unlike. I know it's hard to say that in modern times. Everything's been done before, but I think that we've got a very unique twist involving a real luchador and some real great storytelling, unlike the way things have kind of been put together before. And I think the Catalyst event, I mean, you've got to get in at Catalyst because you got to understand what the catalyst for all this was. But we're not stopping there. It is not. It is Catalyst 1 of 3, but we're not stopping it at issue 3. We've got a nice outline right now for about 21 months of where we're planning on kind of going, and we're just getting started.
That is so awesome. Now, can you talk a little bit about this new relationship with Massive and how important that is for this story to really get out there?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so for us and who we are, we knew that we had to work with the publisher that was established enough to be able to get us everywhere. But it was also about, I think, being just with the right publisher. And, looking at what Massive has been able to build and accomplish just in a very short time, really, it was very, very impressive. And once we sat down and we started actually talking with Kevin and Michael, I think a lot of our sensibilities were the same. And I think that they liked creatively, where, I mean, obviously they wouldn't have signed, the books to their company if they didn't like creatively where it was coming from. But I just, I think a lot of times in business it's about getting just a sense of your partners as, who they are, both as creatives and as people. And we always just felt really comfortable, and honestly, we started talking probably close to a year ago. And kind of put all the pieces together, and now it feels like everything's gone so fast over the last 2 months as we've come towards the public finding out what we've been working on. And now, of course, we're starting to think ahead to what's going to happen for us in San Diego and what's going to happen for us in New York. And I think that it's kind of a right place, right time for us. I think they're the right size publisher for us. And I really appreciate just the support. You never know how it's going to go. And this is our first time, really, this is our first time ever in previews, magazine, right? This is to me, it's a big deal. I posted on my personal Facebook page how when I was in middle school, I remember going into a comic book shop in the San Fernando Valley where I lived. And the shop owner handed me a previews magazine and was like, yeah, this is the catalog. And like my jaw dropped, like, this is so big. And he's like, yeah, you can keep it. And I was like, this is the coolest thing ever. And, 30 years later now to have one of our books, in previews and out there for the world to see, it's super exciting. And the Massive team has done so well by us. They really, if you go to their website right now, you can't miss the Luchaverse. We've got a gorgeous 2-page, ad coming in previews. It drops on May 1st. We've got some exciting plans for San Diego. And so they've been super supportive to us. And, I think we're going to just help each other grow. I think, hopefully we're going to bring some new eyeballs to Massive from, wrestling fans, lucha fans, people who are going to go to the Massive website and they're going to see Harriet Tubman. They're going to see, some of the other, Washington Blood and yeah, exactly. Yep. And I think hopefully, as much as, they're definitely going to bring us more eyeballs than we're going to bring them. Yeah, I'm not being silly here, but I do think, and I hope, because listen, aside from everything else, I've been picking up and reading not everyone, because I just don't have the time, but a number of the Massive releases. And they're so good, and their stories are, and Zorro, and certainly there's a crossover audience, I think, between Zorro and the luchadors, and so I think that there's a lot of great things that we can do together, it was right fit, right time, and we're very excited.
Yeah, so fans could get a hold of the Luchaverse in July, right? So that's kind of the launch. So to be honest, if it's in July, that means it should be in the previews the first couple of weeks of May, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
Right now, yeah. So it's online in previews right now. It's in the physical issue that drops on May 1st. Yeah. And then, we are Massive, really kind of thought long and hard about what to do in terms of getting it out there, because for a comic book fan, most of the people listening to this or watching this, they're used to putting something on order and adding it to their pull list at their local comic shop. So certainly, we hope everybody listening is going to do that. But also, Massive is aware, and we're aware, that there's a lot of wrestling fans that might not know even where their local comic shop is. So we did put a little guide to that at the bottom of our website. But Massive went ahead and put up a few of the covers, the ones that aren't retailer or incentives, on the Massive website now. So it can also be ordered off of the website for July delivery. But we're trying to ease, hopefully, this new generation of lucha fan, wrestling fan into the comic book world, and make it a little bit easier for them from the start, and then get them going to their LCS and creating pull lists in the first place.
And my assumption is, when you're talking to Michael and Kevin, they have so much energy, and they're probably fans themselves. So it's probably a pretty good relationship just from that standpoint as well. Kevin has got more energy than I think I've ever seen in anybody. And like I had an interview with him. He was in an airport on his way to France to talk to someone to translate all the comics into French, because I didn't know this, but France is like the second largest comic book market in the world. So I learned a lot from Kevin too. But it's just amazing to see the opportunities from a publishing standpoint for your title, as well as the rest of the massive team of titles that exist right now.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it definitely helps. I think that both Kevin and Michael are wrestling fans. And, we're aware of the luchadores that we brought to them, and I know Kevin posted an Instagram story the other day from a WWE event. Michael gave a great quote for the press release about, growing up and watching Lucha Libre. And so, yeah, I think that, there are definitely plenty of people out there who just don't get it, right? There's plenty of people that we've pitched, TV or film to, and they're like, oh, it's too niche. It's only for Mexicans. It's only this. And it's like, we're telling superhero stories. We're telling monster hunting stories. Like, you got to be able to kind of think a little bit about the bigger picture. And so it's fantastic that, Kevin and Michael get it. And we've been working with Trevor over there over the last few weeks, and he's been amazing to work with as well. And so, yeah, we're really excited for our relationship with them.
That's beautiful. And then can you talk a little bit about the rest of the team, the artists, the, colorist, the letter, like, what does the team look like? So we could give them a little bit of love too, because as you know,
yes,
especially you, Diego, right, as a writer in a comic book, you're telling a portion of the story, but that art needs to tell a portion of the story because of the limitations, right? So if we could talk a little bit about that, I think that would be really exciting too.
Yeah, and it's actually, I think we're pretty lucky because these original five chapters, let's call them. So what's in one, two, and the first half of three, those were put together, quite some time ago. And Ben Harvey, who's now become just an incredible cover artist for Marvel and a number of other places. Ben actually drew the entire Rey Mysterio comic. And so we are really lucky that he's blown up, and I don't know that it would have worked out the same all these years later for us to hire him for Rey Mysterio, but he did an incredible job. And the colorist Brian was so great on Rey Mysterio that we brought him back for Solar and Super Astro, which will be in number 2, and Tenebris was drawn and colored by Diego Simone, who's again just incredible. Just sometimes an artist's style really fits the genre and the mood that you're going for, and both of them, Ben, it's Rey Mysterio is what I would call an action adventure story, and Ben's style fits so well for that. And Tenebris is more of a kind of a horror story, and Diego, just nailed that. And so, really excited about for everyone to see it. And on the masterpubliccomics.com website or on previews, you can check out. I think it's about an 8-page. Kind of preview. We didn't do the normal because it's 2 stories in 2 parts. We didn't do the normal like drop the first 5 pages as a preview. We did some kind of selections from both of the stories for our preview. So yes, please, everyone, feel free to check it out. And I think that's the other thing that and this is not a knock on anybody else out there that's tried to do wrestling comics or lucha comics before, but I think that there is a quality both of storytelling and of art and just kind of final finished product that has not really existed. And even when you think about like WWE comics or back in the day WCW comics, while the art maybe was really good, they were purposely keeping those stories in the wrestling world. And so they were kind of just naturally cheesy. They weren't really, I think story-wise, as great of stories as they could have been if they had kind
Maybe
of
not
gotten
a lot of depth, right? Maybe not a lot of depth to them, right? Yeah.
Exactly. I think that's a great way to put
it.
A
lot of depth. Yeah.
Right. And that was, and that's not a knock on whoever wrote those. They were doing the assignment, right? They were doing the job of what what the publisher wanted. But here we've just kind of blown the doors wide open to what we can do and the stories that we can tell. And the direction that I provide, from that executive producer role has really just been more like, this is kind of the genre that we're looking for from this title. Give it your all. And we've as Diego said, all credit to Marco, Ivan Plaza and Marco Lopez for the groundwork that they laid in really co-creating the Luchaverse story world with myself and Ruben when we started this project. And originally when we did the first 5 stories, my initial idea was different writer, different team for each story. But Ivan had pointed out quite astute at the beginning that, as we're just starting to lay the groundwork, maybe let's have one writer in Marco tell those first kind of one shot so they really can kind of have really smooth interconnectivity. And it was a great decision. And so, yeah, I can't wait for more people to be able to read what Ivan and Marco originally did. And like Diego said, it gave him a whole lot of meat to work from. And I think that we've got it going in such a great direction, and really excited for everyone to see where it even goes, from there.
Wow. Well, is there anything else that we're leaving out pertaining to the Luchaverse that maybe we haven't covered yet, that maybe we should?
I think in terms of the Luchaverse, so first off, I would definitely encourage everyone, go over to masterpubliccomics.com. We just launched the site. It'll give you a good kind of sense of who we are, what we're doing, where we're going. And again, not to overshadow the Luchaverse by any stretch, but there will be additional series as well to come between Master Public Comics and Massive in due time. But I'm really excited for, I think like Diego said, it's a little bit like the kind of Marvel Netflix universe where you had great standalone series and stories, but when they came together so well. And that's what you'll start to see in the Catalyst event. And then rather than everybody coming together and staying together, we're kind of starting together, and then we're going to kind of blow it all apart and give each of the stars kind of their own arc for a number of issues going forward, and really dive into their genre, their persona, their story. And I think it's going to make for some really great storytelling and really fun reading. And for me, it's fun because even though I co-created the world, I'm still getting these scripts, and I'm like, where is this going? And like I said, I was just absolutely in love with both the interludium chapter, which is Diego's chapter where he brought it all together, and then the first script for where we're going from there. Yeah, it's such great storytelling, and I'm so excited for it.
Yeah. And then Diego, from your standpoint, as a creator, are you able to maybe scratch an itch that you've had as a creator that you haven't been able to do so far with this title?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I was just telling Kevin the other day that when I sent the first script for the interludium, it was a genuine challenge, right? To kind of tie this all together, and seeing the art come through, and even when I was just looking at the what's the word? When it's not like the finished art, it's just like when they're kind of thumbnailing each panel, and I was already seeing how well it was being captured, like almost exactly as I was picturing it in my head when I was writing it. It is such a maybe it is a niche that I had scratched before when I was writing for animation or whatever. Seeing it come to life, seeing an artist kind of take what you're doing and just not only bringing it to life but even improving it. Like it looks so much better than it looked in your head. So detailed and so well told. It is a niche that I've had scratched before, but I can never get tired of it. It's just so exciting, and with every new issue, like I send a new script, and I'm just so excited to start seeing the art come through, and then when it gets colored, and then you finally see the final issue, and it's such a creatively fulfilling experience. And I am so glad that I get the chance to feel that over and over again with this project.
Two points I want to add there real quick. One, the writer has custom luchador masks of his own character on the wall, so there's definitely an itch there that had to get scratched. So I'm gonna put that there. But I do, speaking of artists, because he's not in the first issue, but Javier Martin Cava, who he did the Lucha Brothers story that you're going to see in Catalyst #2, but then he came on to do the interludium story at the end of #3, and he will be doing the art for the next 6 issues that Diego is writing, and he is just absolutely incredible. We nailed it with this team. Super excited, and then we've also got some great cover artists that are coming on board to do stuff we can't quite share yet, but yeah, no, I all respect due. Like I said, I can't do any of this without the great writers and the great artists, and so we are very grateful and appreciative of all the people that have decided to come on board and be part of the creative teams here at Master Public Comics.
That's incredible. I mean, congratulations to both of you. I'm super excited. I mean, I have anything Massive related already in my pull box at my local comic book store because I do think Massive is doing a lot of really unique stories that aren't being told in other publishers. And I think that's kind of their niche, right? Is looking for unique stories that they feel have a really nice path to get into hands of comic book fans that maybe other publishers wouldn't necessarily look at. And because of that, they're bringing stories and they're exploding, right? I mean, some of their titles have just, it's incredible. Exiled, Wesley Snipes. I mean, they got Simon Furman, who's in the Transformer Hall of Fame, writing Astrobots, which is absolutely crazy. So, I mean, they're doing things that I don't think other publishers would do, and they're being rewarded by fans for doing that. And I think Luchaverse is going to be the same thing. I think maybe you're tapping into something that hasn't been fully tapped into yet. And man, fingers crossed that this thing explodes. And I know I'm going to be really excited to jump into it. Yeah.
We appreciate it. We appreciate the support. We
Thank you so
appreciate
much.
the time to talk about it, and
Yeah.
we look forward to feedback. We definitely want to hear what you think of it when it gets in your hands, and hopefully, some of your viewers and listeners will share their thoughts as well. And we look forward to kind of seeing through the summer, how this all goes.
Now, as we get into that July launch, are you going to have a calendar of maybe Comic Cons that you might be joining Massive or doing on your own for the rest of the year?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Yeah. So we're already talking with Massive about San Diego. At San Diego, we do have a booth of our own that we'll be doing some things at, and then also with the Massive booth. And then we're already thinking ahead a little bit to New York Comic Con. But yes, there will be other opportunities as well. And then again, not getting too far ahead, but with some other plans that we have coming up. Starting later this year and into next year, we should have some really good representation at a lot more conventions with one of the other writers and series that we're going to be releasing, who's already kind of at most of the major conventions. So we're looking forward to that.
That's super exciting. Diego, are you going to be at San Diego too?
I hope I can be. If I am, it'll be awesome, honestly, because I've never been to one, and that would be so cool.
It'll be San Diego. I mean, if that's your first Comic Con, that's like going straight to the Premier League in football.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the other thing is we're talking in Mexico City. Their big Comic Con is called La Mole.
Yeah.
And so we've had a great relationship over the years. We've had we've attended La Mole for our action figures and other things. And we work very closely with the magazine Kamikaze down there that runs, now they call it Lucha Alley, at the La Mole convention. So we're talking about maybe having a bit of a presence later this year at their Animole show, and definitely next year at the main La Mole.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. To kind of close out, can you let fans know where they could find the action figures, some of the other stuff that you've worked on from a Massive Republic standpoint? And then obviously July in stores, Luchaverse. Get into your stores right now. Make sure you're asking your store managers to add that title to your pull list. But as far as all the other things that are going to be surrounding, can you kind of let us know where people could go?
Yeah, I mean, so the best, quickest way, at Master Republic everywhere on all social media. And then we have now launched Master Republic Comics as its own social media, its own website. So if you just want comic information, you can dial in and go there. But at Master Republic on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, they said our action figures you can find in stores. All the major online retailers, Big Bad Toy Store and Entertainment Earth. But then also some of them are sold at GameStop, some of them at FYE, and then online from our partner Boss Fight Studio. But you can, an easy Google search will take you to that or our social media. And we also do, live events all over the place. We've got in Southern California, we got 3 this weekend. We are also part of a series of taco and tequila festivals throughout the country. So we've got 7 dates this summer. With big taco and tequila festivals, and we're working on some other live events for the fall. But we'll announce those on our social media as we get closer to that. And yeah, masterpublic.com itself really is more of a corporate website than kind of a shop or come hang out fan site. But for more details, you can obviously check out masterpublic.com. But yeah, that's where you can find us.
Beautiful. And then Diego, for fans to look at some of your past work and maybe other things that you're doing, maybe apart from this, how can they follow you on socials?
Oh, they can just find me as Diego Valenzuela, or they can go to my website, which is diegovalenzuela.org. I couldn't get .com, sadly, but org you can find me. there's some news about I keep a blog in which I more or less talk about the stuff I've been working on, the stuff that gets released and I actually can start talking about.
Yeah,
And yeah, I think you can also find me on Facebook as Diego Valenzuela.
let me write that.
Um, and
Okay.
yeah, and I honestly, once I get the go ahead to talk about the stuff I've been working on,
Yeah.
I cannot shut up about it. So yeah, you can. I always respect the NDA, but once it's over, yeah, you try to stop me. So yeah, now that this is beginning to open up, I will be talking about everything we're doing at Mass Republic, and if anyone's interested in my books or my other stuff, they can also find me there.
Very good. Well, I can't tell you how much I appreciate both of you coming on. I really hope this isn't the last time. Anytime that you want to talk, anything that you're working on, please reach out. You could come on anytime. I had an absolute blast talking with both of you. I'm very excited
Thank you
about
so much.
the title coming in July. And I'm hopefully, when we get into a couple titles that have been released and we could talk more in depth about where maybe the story is at and some of the things that you're doing within the story, I would love to have you come back on if that's okay. And we could talk about the cool stories that you're telling through this title.
That
Yeah,
sounds
of
great.
course.
We really appreciate the support, and like I said, this the first official interview ever about Mass Republic Comics and Massive and us getting this out there. So we really appreciate the support and look
Yeah,
forward to
thank you
coming
so
back.
much.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I thoroughly enjoyed my conversation with both of you, and you definitely need to come back. I think that would be a lot of fun.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Well,
Thanks.
I wish you all the very best the rest of the week. I will make sure that in the subscription or below that I put all the links for you to follow and join this kind of movement around the Luchaverse. You're going to have everything you need as tools to make sure that you can follow closely below. But thank you, gentlemen, for joining me today, and I hope you have an amazing week.
You too,
You
man.
too.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.